My name is Councillor Cllr Holes and I am chair of this committee and will be conducting the meeting tonight. This meeting will be video recorded and will be uploaded to the council's website. More information is available on the council's website. Moving to item 1, apologies.
We've got apologies from Councillor Maud Attrell, Councillor Carl Attrell and Councillor Lee Attrell.
Very much. I understand our independent member Martin Lyons is joining us
Yes,
online. Okay, thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. If any members have anything they wish to raise on the agenda items, or if anything comes up during the meeting, just indicate in the normal way. Item 3, the minutes of the last meeting. I believe Nikki has an email that was sent from our independent member that she's going to read out.
It said the minutes themselves appear very brief and do not consistently reflect questions and challenge from members and the responses from officers. More detailed minutes would be beneficial for the transparency and to demonstrate the effectiveness of the committee. So we'll note that in the check.
Yep, thank you. Okay, anything else on the minutes? Those and seconder. Those Councillor Paul, seconded Councillor Park. All in favour? Any against? And abstention. Item 4, public participation. Which is public.
That's registered.
Item 5 then is the tender award for 1 Horton Heath, first residential parcel, and to approve progress on for the on-site primary school. I'll ask Sarah King to introduce.
Thank you. Hello everyone. I'll give a very brief outline because I know some of you were at the members briefing we had last week to just go through a little bit of the detail and whoa.
It should be fine.
Now, one moment while we sort.
I'm not doing that. Right, so the point was we had a briefing last week for all members to come to have any points of clarification. The report in front of this evening is quite lengthy, as you're becoming used to with all the papers, and it's talking about the potential tender award for the main contractor for the first residential parcel, so the first 381 units. So we trailed that in previous papers, said it was coming now. We've got the outcome of the tender. So that's been brought to you for scrutiny before this paper goes on to Cabinet on Wednesday evening. Also in the paper, there's some commentary around the school where we're asking for some approvals and commentary around the financial impact and the slightly bigger story. It's not just about the tender, it's how it all fits together. It's a massive jigsaw, isn't it? And a bit of commentary on the risks in the paper. I'll just mention, just to be really clear, that we've tried to make as much of this paper public as possible, but there are definitely elements of it that are commercially sensitive because we're talking about a tender award. And we're talking about advice from that's privileged. So lots of things have been put in the paper as much as possible, but there are elements in the appendices that have been kept exempt. So if we can just be mindful when we're going through that we don't mention potential names or sums, that would be very helpful in the public debate, and then we can go into more detail and exempt if we need to. I think that probably introduces it, Chair. So there's a whole team of us here dotted about. Hopefully can help with questions.
Chris, did you want to add any? Okay, members, I think most of us, if not all of us, were at that briefing last week. So questions, please. Jim.
The reference to the value engineering possibility to start with any recommendations. Do we feel that the risks are outlined clearly enough within this report that value engineering, as the way which was described to members last week, could well mean that planning needs to be sought again or consulted for the changes. And given that one of the big hold-ups with the whole process has been keeping planning pace at a rate that's necessary to get everything going through, that has been one of the big problems with this scheme so far. So the descriptions of what we had last week about value engineering, which to my little brain sounds like cost cutting, and something that's what's aiming to do, which is to get costs down by rethinking how we do things. The example was given about some of the possibilities with, for example, some of the apartments. That's going to mean that they will be presumably a different shape, a different size, and that means that they're going to have to go back to planning. Given that delay is really expensive, delay is one of the kind of issue. I don't know the right way to put it. It's to say to play with the scheme is unfair, but it's been a constant factor, hasn't it? The delays from planning not happening at the pace at which was anticipated. Is that risk clear enough to Cabinet that should value engineering be explored in a way that was described to us last week, that actually in itself also has a risk of great delay? And that if we're looking to get value engineering savings, that needs to be considered with that in mind. That if you're looking for a big savings through making a building different, that means you've got to go. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. I think you'll probably want to chip in with a bit more detail, but I think the changes that may come through value engineering, it's not expected, although they may have to go back to planning, it's not expected there'll be that material, they would be an issue. But obviously we can't predetermine how things would happen at the planning committee. That feels fair, doesn't it? If members don't feel there's enough in there, then we could put something additional to Cabinet, which I would rather get to them before Wednesday so that they can see it in advance of being handed it on Wednesday evening, just to flesh that out if you don't think it's clear enough in here.
I don't think it is. I mean, if we're talking about something fundamental like the shape of a building changing, that's potentially something that could be hold up.
Yeah. Okay.
So we'll pick that up in the recommendation.
You want to add a little bit to that?
Yeah.
So I think the fact that you've asked the question means it's probably not clear enough. What I would say though is that of the whole range of things that fall under that value engineering bracket, the example you've cited is the only one that's got a significant planning impact. The others might mean that we go back and discharge conditions with different information, but that's not back to committee. A number of the big ticket items in there got no planning implications whatsoever. So there is a range of risks in that value engineering pot. And again, if we're going to put the risk more fully into members, we should also put in there that the phase of the development's got those flats in it. We did a mid-tender clarification that moved that phase right to the end of the lower rate delivery. So we've perceived the risk in getting the design changes done, approved, costed and instructed, and we've mitigated that to a certain extent by moving that bit of the project right to the back of the programme. But we can put that into acknowledging the risk a bit more, and we've done something to try and mitigate the impact of that risk.
Yeah, I said, if you'll allow me to go through them.
Yeah, no problem.
Firstly, on the recommendations, there's 3 and 4. We refer to funded by future scheme surpluses. Bit concerned about that because it's a very ambiguous statement to make. So, very clarification that you can provide on that. That's more of an observation, but sort of clarification. Secondly, the 3 options for the procurement process, we know that one is for non-starter, and of the other 2, prefer just to negotiate or deal with the contractor's tender. Is there any legal risk at that by going down that line? It's touched upon at the meeting last week, but that's the other point. Then we come on to more financial side. you suggested that you felt you could fall back quite a few million on the M&E packages and other bits and pieces. How confident are you on that? Because having been there and done that, sometimes it's you think you can get one, but you can't. But are you confident that's achievable? And finally, as Jennifer, to the value engineering, we spoke speaking about 2 blocks. I think they're the 4 and 5 story ones.
There's no 5-story.
4 stories there, okay.
Yeah, actually one's 3-story, one's 4-story, but yeah.
So your 600 square metres, we're looking to say, will be spread over all the 4.
All of the levels.
It's not a massive reduction of the building side, it's just the floor sizes. Do you follow me?
Yeah, I do. If I deal with that one first, I'll probably go in the reverse order. So the smaller block that's going to get some changes, quite honestly, you won't even receive it. We'll have to point it out when we go back to committee to show you the changes. And those are about making the building a little bit more workable and slightly more efficient. The southern gateway block, I think it would be wrong to suggest you wouldn't notice the change, because 600 square metres over 4 levels is still 150 square metres per floor. And, that is a significant change. So, yeah, it will be noticeable. But again, to caveat that, the current approved plans, those flat sizes are 50% in some cases above the national standard. And some of that's by virtue of the curved nature of the building, but also the communal areas have not realised the efficiencies that they should have done. So a lot of that area comes out of reduction in communal spaces. So we'll still end up with a very high quality, very usable, good block of flats. It just won't be excessive, which currently it is excessive.
Good question. The other question.
Yeah, should we go in reverse order?
Yeah.
So I think the next one back up was about confidence in value engineering. So the items that we've mentioned at the briefing last week and that form the basis of 8.6 and the high degree of confidence on those. There's a whole load of other things that we're less confident in, and for the purposes of reporting to members, we've left them out of the equation. They'll still be looked at. Those are the areas where we feel there could open up a discussion around quality, which we've tried to steer away from. The mechanical and electrical, we've already asked the bidding contractor to go and re-engage their supply chain and effectively submit a contractor's proposal as to what they would have done if it was a full design package, rather than at the moment we've employed a consultant to produce a performance spec and then they tendered on that performance spec. And the early signs are obviously we can't meet them and discuss formally until after Wednesday and then a standstill period. But they are giving us confidence that there is a few millions of pounds in the mechanical and electrical package to be saving.
Can I just add that the business cases assume no BE, so we assume no value engineering. So we've tried to be as prudent as possible, but we haven't put that in. We'll see what happens. Like you, Derek, I've seen that you take the BE with one hand and then you give it out with the other. So we're trying to be as careful as we can.
Thank you.
The procurement options. I think the question is there a legal risk of proceeding with a single bidder?
Yeah.
Whatever you do in procurement, there's a risk. I think the advice we've had purely on a legalities point of view is that we've run a compliant process and we're entirely within our legal rights to accept a single bid. The other options close down some elements of risk but introduce others. And the rewind option, which I think is referred to as option B in there, I'm honest, probably gives us the nicest outcome for the least hassle, but it's probably the most risky in terms of legal challenge, because it's not a recognised procedure, even though the lawyers have said we would support you if you wanted to do it. So I think from a purely risk point of view, legal risk, not commercial risk, but legal risk, the proceed option is probably the lowest, only from a legal challenge point of view, not other factors.
And your other question was around the recommendations and funding it from future surpluses. So the premise of that has been the same with all of the schemes, that the whole programme stands on its own 2 feet. So the business plans that have been appended. I can't remember if they're exempt or not. But the business plans show how the money is recouped over time. So that is the model. There is no other funding. The funding has to come from the surpluses from the scheme going forward.
That's fair. Thank you.
Alex. So if it's rejected on taking over this one tender, it says it's 6 to 9 months to do a re-tender process, which obviously could mean much more incurred costs, loads of delays. But actually, is there anyone else who's going to engage with us in that tender process? Because we've run it once. Is anyone who think, oh, we've missed out there, we better get in?
So it wasn't run as an open tender, it was run on a framework. So a framework only has so many contractors on it. Quite a big pool though. The answer is we don't know. So we could go to a completely open tender, see who's out there, but that comes with its risks because some contractors are looking at it and say, well, there's so many in the pool, I don't want to throw my hat in the ring. So there's that. We could go to a different framework and try a different framework with different contractors on, see if that gets us a different pool of contractors to work with. Yeah.
We don't get to that on. If we delayed everything by 9 months, the extra cost would be because of the delays, etc.
We've worked out the delay only cost.
Yeah.
What we're not able to do with any sort of credibility is factor in the upside of incurring that cost.
So what was the ballpark?
That's a Tom question.
Yeah, it's paragraph 25, so it's 515 to 700,000, depending on the length of the day. So whether it's 6 months or 1 month.
But if it saved you 5 million on the end contract price, that might be worth doing. So the whole thing is a balance.
Yeah.
You have to put it all together.
Thanks. Thank you. Just to pick up on what Alex was asking, we could widen it so that it's not on that framework, but there's only a certain number of tier 1 suppliers out there, and they're getting there's a small pool because they would be going bust or being required. So realistically, if you did widen it, there's still going to be looking for the same people in the same pool, and you don't want to go below that because there's implications as to the quality of the work and then knock on things for that. Is that right?
Yeah.
In part, that's part of the story. Yeah. So in terms of tier 1 contractors, it's probably not even the 3 out there that would be likely to want to bid for this. So far, we've had one that's he obviously has. One of the options that we've considered over the last 2 years, to be honest, but particularly in the last 6 months, is in taking smaller elements of the lower acre to market. But again, you look for where those SMEs are, and if we were going to place 3 contracts for the lower acre, really we want at least 5 or 6 credible SMEs bidding for that work, and we can't name 3. So,
and then there would be no funds. Sorry.
Yeah, logistics.
The logistics of having lots of different contractor firms on the same side in health and safety issue.
Much more of a logistical issue rather than a fundamental problem, but yeah, it increases the challenge.
Sorry, Nick.
The legal understanding, looking at a bid, seems quite straightforward. Those just accepting the risk. But every time we vary it, we increase the risk of challenge. So the question I always ask myself is, in whose interest would it be to challenge?
There's a whole paper on that that preceded this stuff. So there's 2 different categories of challenge that people can look to make. The one that gets the most attention is challenge from unsuccessful contractors, or contractors that didn't bid but said, if I'd known that was the project at the end of it, I would have bid. We're quite confident that is a very low likelihood in this scenario, but it's still there as a present risk. The other category of challenge is more of a judicial review route, or somebody that wants to ask a question to government cabinet offices about our financial probity. Then how do you quantify that? Who's likely to do it? Have no idea. But those are the 2 challenges that we need to be mindful of.
There'll be political.
Possibly, yeah. So the risk from contractors challenging the process is present, but we think very low likelihood. We have no ability to quantify the other risk and challenge from whoever decides they want to do it.
So it's, the other question I've got is we've deferred profitability quite a lot by increase, if we set this tender. How much have we deferred it? Because I find that we've had some very carefully worked out plans for different bits, but I don't think put them all together, and I couldn't really assess what an impact is on ability to pay for this.
Oh, the overall, Tom, have you got something on the overall picture? I know the individual business plans.
Yeah, we'll come back to you. I'll just find the numbers. I'll come back to you on that.
Thank you.
Questions, Rosemary?
Yeah, actually, it's just the first time really. The only lender received is a tier one contractor, and they should have an annual turnover of over 500 million, as stated in 1931 and 32. But such a contractor would not normally be interested in just phase 1A, having only 126 residences to construct, and would usually expect continuation to build further lower acre parcels. So I do wonder if such re-tender conditions imposed by the council has discouraged others from tendering in the first instance, or encourage withdrawal of those who did submit expressions of interest. I also wonder if the council did try to re-tender the remaining lower acre parcels of 3 to 8, rather than continue with the first contractor, if anyone else would then be interested or put off by the fact that the tier 1 contractor was only given 126 constructs. You know, the councillors developed a could be scheme by outsiders to be difficult or demanding, too many conditions being put in the tender, which might end up, of course, re-tender is for further delays anyway. So I'm thinking about council reputation in going out to re-tender the remaining lower acre parcels, the cost of it. And also you have to consider how that looks for the tier 1 contractor who's only given 126. And they're obviously big business. So you know, it's just a concern I have on that. Why would we not say to that contractor, do the whole of lower acre? Because you're saying, well, there might be a price issue or other issues that's all listed in here. But they are tier 1. They have got reputations to retain. Does that make sense? And it's just concerning me a bit.
I suppose, well, it's because, so we asked them to fix price the first couple of parcels so that we know exactly what we're getting. The rest of it, we want a more iterative process. So, and we wanted to be able to be in a position where if you're that far in and it's not going well or something isn't working, we've got the flexibility to be able to change it. Now, the tender award is for the entire lot. So if it works for both parties, it can carry on. But it's just given us break clauses so that we can be a stronger client and be able to drive the contract.
What break clauses does the contractor have though? Because it's got to be a mutual trust and working together, hasn't it? Otherwise, if we lay down all the dictates, so to speak, it could make the contractor think, oh, you know, I'll withdraw or start.
I mean, what I'm probably going to say here cuts both ways, to be honest, and in some ways proves your point, and in other ways possibly helps to allay some of the concerns. But I think you're right, a tier 1 contractor of the size of contractor we're talking about wouldn't normally bid for 126 residences if that's what they thought it was. The flip side to that is, whilst it's our intent for them to deliver the whole thing, it's our first route into market with a brand new product that we've not built before. We don't know what it costs, and to be committed to all 381 felt like too big a risk for us. The break clauses do go both ways, so we can't make them deliver more than 126, and they can't make us give them more than 126. So from the point of contract going live, the way the contract is constructed is much more around partnership working, open book pricing, visibility, and working with them and then working with us to encourage us to keep giving them the extra phase and the next parcel. So
I accept I don't know a lot about this because I'm new to this committee and I'm not being involved with reporting people at all. But that does worry me when I look at this, I must admit, you know, if you do go out to retender, it doesn't look good for anybody, does it? And SMEs, I think, would delay further and cost a lot more anyway, but what do I know? Can I ask another question quickly? It's to do with the EV parking. There's an increased cost of 2.1 million for additional EV charging infrastructure. I wonder what was the original cost, if this is extra. And if we look at the 14 chief update of the 11th of July, it states in item 5 that Eastleigh Homes delivery strategy confirms the council aims to enable and encourage green and sustainable lifestyles for all, which is good in principle. But do we really need one EV point per car space? EV market sales have been flat over the last, car sales have been flat over the last 2 years. And according to the DVLA, the total of electric vehicles on the UK roads is less than 3% as of March this year. So I'm thinking you can be generous. Could you have a hub rather than one EV charger per space? Could there not be a green hub? People in flats and houses could go and use them, and it's reducing cost, possibly.
Yeah, it's a building control thing now, so we are obliged every new property needs to have, you're going to correct me, one allocated charger per space, or obviously in curtilage if you have a parking area.
And like the building rule,
Building regulations, changed.
it is as of last autumn.
Ah,
It wasn't
no,
in earlier versions of the business plan.
No,
no.
exactly.
Okay, thank you.
This council or is this
No, this is national building control, building regulations. So it's actually one EV charger for every property that has allocated parking. So we could look at not having as much allocated parking. That creates a whole world of different pain. And we've gone with such a high level of allocated parking because overall, Port and Heath delivers less parking spaces than the SPD for the rest of the borough. That's a deliberate choice because we want to encourage people to not have second, third and fourth cars and use sustainable transport. So when you put it all in the pot, you know, we're delivering less parking spaces overall on the site, and we've gone with more allocated. The knock-on effect now is that they've all therefore got to have their own EV charger, which we provide and incur the cost of. There is a little grey area that we're still looking at, which is where we retain the stock. We can provide them as they are required rather than from day one, and they never get used.
Okay, yes, because I
But
thought
that's a little loophole where we're the landlord. That doesn't apply where we're selling a house. It just has to be there. So we might be able to defer some of the costs, but we've still got to accept the liability if everybody moves in and says they want one.
that's unlikely.
It's very unlikely that there'll ever be 100% uptake, but we've got to allow for it, even if we never end up doing it. And where we sell a house, whether they ever use it or not, we've got to provide it at the point of sale. Yes, Bruce.
Yeah, I wonder if you could clarify the situation with the bidding process. So we've got one bidder that's come forward. From what I've read, and it's quite difficult to pick out what I'm looking for because there's so much there. Were there two other bidders that were interested and then backed out, or did we just get the one?
No, there were 5 expressions of interest. 3 went as far as getting all the information, downloading it and starting to submit a bid. 2 then stepped away, so we were left with the remaining 1.
Because what I did find within the pack was that one of them was saying that the condition of the soil, subsoil or something, wasn't good, and it would incur a lot of costs. Also, I can't remember exactly because I said there was so much in there. Are we happy with what we've done? Because I feel, I've been on this committee for quite some time, and this is the most complex, even more than the AGS board, which was complex in its time. And I'm finding I'm overwhelmed with numbers and information. And I feel uncomfortable by the fact that we've got one bidder, that if we deferred on that, there's something, 74,000, I can't remember it on the interest, £74,000 a day, a month, a week, it's an ongoing, it's costing if we didn't go forward. And it feels like that one bidder has got us over a barrel because we haven't got any other options. I just feel very nervous about it.
There's a few different points in there. Can I do them again? So the thing about the soil, there's been two expressions of concern raised by the contractor that pulled out. One is about where we've drawn the lines between the packages that we've let. And it's unusual for a main contractor not to be doing groundworks and earthworks. We're doing it ourselves, and that is how traditional developers would do it, but not main contractors. So that I think is unusual for the people that have bid, but it's not unusual as a construction practice. The concern about the quality of the soil is a bit of a red herring, because we've got lots and lots of as dug topsoil, as dug subsoil. And rather than muck it all away and let them pay or charge us to bring it back in from fresh, we're dealing with it on site. So what they've actually said is, we've got no visibility into your testing program and your certification regime. They don't need it because it's our liability to get it right. And we are more than happy with the process and the certification and the quality of the product we'll give them to install. So there's elements to both of the points you made, but they're subtly different. With the point about being all in with one contractor, absolutely share the concern. And this is where all of the varying factors of concern and risk need to go into the pot. And whatever the decision is, has to be a consensus that overall that's the one that we're most comfortable with. I think to say that we are going to be comfortable with it is a stretch. It's the one that we're most comfortable with. But we're not wedded to that contractor, because if it's not going right, if their quality is not right, or we can't agree the prices, that's where the provisions that Rosemary was talking about kick in. And we don't have to give them all of the other 5 phases. We can not instruct them, and we can deliver them somehow else. But if we
somehow else, that's worrying.
Yeah. But if we're in that situation, it's because we need to be in that situation, not because we want to be in that situation. You know, the intent here is that we work through value engineering and we fix prices with the bidding, party, that if we award it, and that the value engineering is realised and the cost of expenditure comes back in line with the original budget, and they do a fantastic job. That's the plan A. But it's a long game. It's a big project. It would be foolish of us to only have a plan A.
Another question. It's about the school. So I'm trying to get my head around, the fact that Hampshire County Council project managed lots of school builds in Hampshire over the years, and so clearly have expertise. We've chosen Mace, which is the company that they use. And as I understand it, the reason that we've chosen to do it ourselves is because we feel that it's a better quality build. Is that right?
Not exclusively that. I think there's an element of, in recent years, schools that Hampshire have been built have been designed down to a minimum standard and a minimum cost point. And that's reflected in some of the buildings that have come forward in recent years. Again, it's been discussed quite a lot at board meetings, and the final reason for the decision probably needs a separate briefing.
Because I've not, what's making me uncomfortable is I've not seen the pros and cons going to Hampshire, doing it ourselves. Not firm enough for a decision which would make sense to me. I can understand that with the money with the lack of funding that local authorities have been receiving from government over the recent years, that standards might drop somewhat because of lack of money. But like with this project, we're already being tremendously complex, and we're just adding another complexity by deciding to do this ourselves rather than getting somebody else to do it and then take the risk. And I just want to understand what the benefits are, rather than maybe if it's slightly better quality. what the benefits are for us to take on all these extra risks and exactly what those risks are.
I think Chris is right. So the decision on that was taken. I can't remember when. Was it the last? I genuinely can't remember. I don't know if it was the last cabinet round or the one before that. But probably a briefing for all, and we can provide that to all members so that everybody understands the logic behind self-delivery of the school and the differences that we're hoping to bring to it, rather than a bog standard box Hampshire school, so that everybody's completely clear. Because this committee will have to look at these things going forward. So the more we can put into it, so that you will get to understand the nuances, that would be very helpful. So that's probably the best way to start.
I think so, because I'm feeling really uneasy about the way this was going, because when the project first started several years ago, I was wholesale saying, yeah, this is good. But now that we're starting to get into the real nitty gritty of it, it's looking much more complex than I thought it would be. And the ability for us to be able to understand and monitor it, well, for me personally, I'm not sure that I have that ability.
Yeah, right. So if you leave that with us, we'll do something, and then we'll try and give you the comfort of how we're going to take it forward, all those steps, the logic of the decision to self-deliver, and then how we'll give you comfort that delivering it going forward, how we're mitigating the risks is probably the way forward. So I'll pick that up separately.
Okay, thank you. Jin and then Derek.
Thank you. Let's start off by, I'm feeling increasingly happier with the standard of the reports we're seeing on what reports going against what we're saying, what Councillor Tennent was saying. I think we're seeing much more granularity. We're seeing much less what a sceptical person might describe as flannel going into reports. Much more robust, much more robust, and I'm really pleased that we've had it. So it's a good thing, and it makes me feel more confident about the project. So thanks very much indeed for that. Also, I think the quality of the conversation we're having about one board as members, I think this is significantly better. I think we've been better briefed. I think we're more aware of what's going on with it, but it doesn't pull away from it being huge. And so it does require our attention. My questions, though, go back to the questions. First of all, organisational capacity. Eastleigh Borough Council's organisational capacity has been mentioned. I'm not sure it's in this one, but certainly in the previous reports, as being a limiting factor. It takes time and effort to pull together. There's to go to planning to be delivered, for things to be organised, and it certainly could be a bottleneck. I believe it has been described as a bottleneck in the past. Are we confident that the funding from One Portal Heath extends enough to support the organisational capacity of Eastleigh Borough Council to be able to deliver this? I don't mean specifically just with those working 100% on One Portal Heath. I know there's plenty of resource going in there. I mean, every other part of the council. So I think, as Councillor Tennent has described, it's really big, and it stretches into virtually every aspect of what the council does. And so therefore the organisational capacity of the council as a whole is something which I think we need to be confident that the council can cope.
Yeah.
I've got more questions. Do you want to do that first?
No, go forward with them.
Okay, thank you.
Come on in turn.
The second thing is, I'm sure Councillor Tennant and Councillor Couldrey will recall the One Portal Heath Management Committee meeting where the planning decision was to exempt the earlier developments from the Section 106 for affordable housing. And the reason for that was put forward as to include it would be inappropriate given that it went the schemes. We were assured at the time that didn't matter too much because it was using standard contractor approaches to viability, and it's okay because there's this new affordable housing scheme we're taking part of, and therefore maintaining the level of 35% of affordable housing, which instead is only what Eastleigh's local plan states. It's not going above that. 31% affordable housing is exactly what the local plan states for any development, very much otherwise within the area, 35%. But these developments are not tied to that because the Section 106 has been taken away due to this promise of this is going to happen. We've been informed that the current affordable housing scheme expires in March 26. We know that this project is going to be looking to try and value engineer where it can to gain funds. I think what I'd like, and I'm sure members would like, going forwards, is to see absolutely solid commitment that even though the planning commitment has been taken away to force these developments to meet the council's minimum affordable housing level, that will be delivered through these developments. Now, the office is going to say yes, but my own peace of mind, I'd really like to know that that's the case, because it's why I was so nervous about it being taken off as a planning condition, that when you then get to the point when you're trying to find money, you're trying to find funding for stuff, that's when that sort of thing suddenly gets compromised on. And I'm sure everybody around this table is really adamantly clear that delivering at least 35% of affordable housing is what makes this project worth doing. So I'd hate to see that disappear. I think I'll leave it at that.
Okay, well, I'll go backwards again in that order, if that's all right, and I'm conscious we need to come back to your numbers, Councillor Couldrey, in a second. So the affordable housing, absolutely, the commitment is there to deliver 35% affordable housing. What we need to do is see what the new government's grant levels are, to see is it social housing, is it affordable housing, and then we need to come back and explain that in the same way we're going to keep back. So we'll come back and explain the options, and we need to choose the option we're going to take. But the commitment is 35%, and it always has been right the way through.
Even though it's taken off as planning condition.
Yes, yeah. And as for organisational capacity, interesting. So it is riddled through this report as a risk, and it will continue to be, because as you point out, it is huge. So I think the capacity to deliver the houses is there and thereabouts, for the team directly 100% doing the work. I think that can happen. Houses can come out live. I think our nervousness is the bits around that. But so you asked about the resources and the financial commitment. The financial commitment is there. What we don't necessarily have just at the moment is all the pieces. So we need to get the website up and running. We need to start selling these things. We need to start letting them a bit closer to the time, and wills all over that. So there are plans putting things together. I don't know if you want to pick it up, Dee. Dee is running an Eastleigh Borough, and she's going to do an all-member briefing to try and give you a bit more comfort on that side of things. I don't feel
Yeah, I'll just very briefly, it says it in the report that we set up this Eastleigh Corporations working group, looking at all of the around division, all the requirements around the housing, landlord functions, sales and marketing, HRA finance requirements, the neighbourhoods and estates requirements, and looking at all of the resources that we need in place to support that. So it's a work in progress at this stage. But we'll come back with more detail at the right time.
Thank you.
Do we want to pick up Councillor Couldrey on numbers? I think Tom's.
Yeah, I think it was about the services, wasn't it, and the changes over time. So yeah, you're completely right. In terms of the additional costs which we're incurring at the moment, they are making our annual repayment on the retained borrowing that go up each financial year. So Appendix H picks that position up. Appendix H is looking at making sure that we're repaying the full cost of retained borrowing over the 50-year period, and what our financial services each year. As the report states, there's a slip in terms of in what years we're seeing that surplus happen. So previously we were seeing an ongoing surplus throughout the project in order, in effect, to ensure the project can still repay its debt and not return a deficit to the council. We're looking at pushing back when we would realise that surplus. So around about the moment year 36 of that project. Which is
so as I understand it, then we're not going to. It's going to take 36 years for the market rent to start paying for it.
yes. Yes, that's correct.
And we have market sales and social rentals, affordable rents and shared ownership.
Yeah.
All of them slipped back.
Yeah, all of them sit back because there's a proportion of these costs have got to be slipped up by all of those.
That's obvious. Yeah. That's right. Yes, I understand that. And do we have So this is, I mean, 36 years on market rent seems to be one of the ones that one report be quite self-financing. Social rent, I think, is, you know, I accept entirely being another game. So shared ownership as well, and affordable rent, well, it depends where we set the rent, I suppose. But it is a huge risk. What the biggest risk, of course, in that is if we don't sell these units. After all, we know that there's a risk if we're putting too much into the market at one time. And if they don't sell, we have a plan B.
Well, we can switch tenure, so if they didn't sell, we could look to market rent instead. I don't know if you might be better thinking, Will, because you've got more, your finger is perfect.
We have the ability to flex tenures, and Sarah said is the key one. I think it's unrealistic to think we wouldn't sell all of them anyway. It's just the rate of sale might be impacted. So as referenced in the report, as well as the original assumptions that have been made, we've commissioned some updated economic and market research at the moment to look at sales rate, market depth, the model essentially, and give us feedback on it. A, we use that to tweak how we approach sales and marketing this time, and B, it's going to inform subsequent phases about how we do tenure mix and at what delivery rate. So there is, and I will be candid, I come from selling homes for a long time, there is an element of risk. We're going into the unknown, but actually there's a strong demand in the area, and I think it is realistic to think that there's a lot of demand, particularly for the kind of products we are bringing to market.
You mean the sets?
Yes, yeah, particularly the mix. It's not what a market-facing developer would bring to market, and that's why we've asked for that insight and research to check that it will deliver the returns we want at the rate we want. But partially that is a benefit to us because we are addressing particular property types the market doesn't address well. The market tends to prefer to go towards higher and larger homes with more profits in that, frankly, and we are aiming much more at kind of mid-market, small, I mean, affordable, non-affordable home sense product, which potentially opens up a market that we're not going to directly compete with on.
I'll go to Alex and Rosemary, then Jim.
So the land surplus won't have an effect on business as usual council finances because it's just wanted that.
Yeah.
Just talking about the risk of sales there, I'm thinking of the risk to buyers as well, because you say that you will, as developer, you'll sell the properties, but you also use an estate agent. Can you ensure that that estate agent belongs to the TPO, the Properties Ombudsman? Because that they don't have to be any more than they have to be licensed or qualified to sell houses. And my worry is that there's a risk that the agent will sell off-plan to buyers, giving them unrealistic completion dates and promises, despite the council as developer reserving the right to make changes. You know, I've been there. I've been in this situation. I bought a house through a property developer who turned out to be a Tory council up outside London, and the estate agent was not honest with us. He must have known the situation from the developer, but he was not honest. I wouldn't like to see that happen here on this scale. So if we can make sure that the estate agent is licensed and a member of the TPO, to give buyers somewhere to go if things go wrong, you know, to have some comeback, some support.
So to clarify, we're not outsourcing it to an estate agent, we're looking at hybrid models. So we've got a tender out at the moment for estate agency support, but it will be managed by us internally in terms of sales. They're just providing staff on our behalf to sell on our behalf and managing introductions for us.
They will have contact with the buyers.
Yes, on our behalf, and we will manage them. Bear in mind, we are requiring them, we are going to register with the NHQB, New Homes Quality Board, which is a new organisation with a new code of conduct that covers things exactly like we covered about completion dates. It's very strict, very, very strict rules around the NHQB. as part of the tender process, we're assessing that they need to comply with the NHGB rules and TPO rules, which are very similar. And we will be managing them anyway. So the actual ultimate decisions on reservations, completion, etc., sit with us, not with the agent. They're simply kind of adding
Are you
stuff.
sure that they repeat what you say and don't make false promises to people? Then this is what worries me. This is why you need a professional body behind that agent, so that we've got some redress if things go wrong. I say we, the buyers.
To be clear, we are expecting to have those professional bodies behind them anyway, and
Well, they don't, no, that's what they don't.
those that have expressed an interest so far for us do. And certainly when we come to score the quality of the tenders, that's the criteria we'll be looking at. To say they won't be acting on their own anyway, they will be acting on our behalf, and we are covered by an underpinning body, NHGB, which signed up to that. That applies to new build homes. It gives you quite a lot of protection in the same way.
But I have those protections, but there we go. It's reassuring to hear that anyway. Thank you.
Really quick one for Tom. Thank you so much for clarifying on the financial position. A quick look at Appendix H. Can you just let me know, you said it slipped by a few years compared to what it was previously. How many years was it previously when you last released?
It wasn't, so before, as I said, there was a continual slight increase in surplus.
Okay.
At the moment, we're realising a small surplus to start off with, just because the initial years before we've got the full debt package set up. And then after that, we'll hold it steady, and then we'll start seeing surplus every few years.
Questions? We're joined by Martin as our independent member on screen. Martin, do you have any questions or any comments?
It was just, I forget which section it was in now. It might be in the organisational points. It was around the housing management system that's been put in place for One Horton Heath. As part of bringing it all back in house. I note that in there's a comment around bringing the system as part of the Salesforce platform, so basically developing it in house as opposed to coming off the shelf with commercially available software. Given that you've got organisational constraints as it is with this sort of area, and obviously with the project as a whole, is that the most suitable option?
Pick it up, Dean.
We've had lots of discussions about this, and it's really important to us in terms of the design principles for our IT solutions, to make sure that everything is integrated as possible. And it means that we'll be able to cross-reference the new residents with all of our other existing residential support systems. So it's going to take a little bit more time and effort at the start, but we think it will lead to a better outcome and better solution for everyone in the long run.
Okay, so there's enough capacity and support in the development of that, and the ongoing development, should you need to sort of adjust for future sort of legislation, etc., that you've got the capacity to do so?
Yes, we've had lots of discussions on this with our head of housing and head of IT, and they've been working on this a lot over the last couple of weeks. So yes, we've looked at all of those considerations for future-proofing the system.
Okay, and in terms of the financial sort of transactional processing, integration with existing systems, etc., that's all looked at in terms of integration, automation, so you've not got additional sort of manual burden on an already stretched finance team in sort of delivering this as well?
Yeah, that's been one of the key considerations in the conversations that we've been having.
Okay, are you able to just give me some information on that outside of this, please?
Yeah.
Just kind of the background.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The integrations, it's probably worth mentioning, the integrations on Salesforce, because we use Salesforce for most, but not all of our systems. The integrations into finance are already there. So we just copy those, will on this. That's one of the reasons we preferred using the Salesforce system than the off the shelf, because the off the shelf, we'd have to build whole new integrations. So we can pick it up separately and explain a little bit more detail, but that was one of the benefits of going with the Salesforce system, was that instant financial integration, because we've already got it.
Great, thank you. I just didn't want to see that there were sort of quick wins that could be sort of taken to avoid any additional burden, given sort of the scale of the project, but any spare capacity is going to be vital.
Yeah.
Cool, thank you.
Derek.
Yeah. I guess we're still on the housing, on the school, yeah. On the housing, looking through the submission by the contractor and all the technical questions and have you had subsequent discussions and meetings with them? Be confident that everything they've said is honest and truthful, because I know that sometimes when you're doing a submission like this, you tend to embellish it. Are you comfortable with everything that's in the health and safety, the programming, the structure for the staffing?
Yeah,
Comfortable with all that?
we've met and we interviewed. We did have some members on the interview panel as well. So we've gone through the same process we would normally go through, really quite a bit of rigor. Yeah.
Sure.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from members? I think some of it's been covered, but our bottom line is that we have to ensure that our council services aren't affected by whatever happens to one company. I think Alex did ask the question that actually our services are protected.
Yes.
And that we are not endangering our services with this project. And that is something that the outside auditors want to have reassurance on. So just wanted to mention that. Nobody's mentioned the grant support. We've been advised not to go for the current grant aid. The new government's come in and they've said a lot about housing, but at the moment their view and their plans for grant support for new housing haven't been confirmed. In fact, we have heard nothing on that. How confident are we that something is in the pipeline? I know it was mentioned at the briefing the other week, last week. But also we need to be fully aware that there's always the possibility that nothing or something doesn't come forward and therefore we have to coverage.
Yeah, I think we feel fairly confident with that, knowing 100% that there will be a grant programme. What we're not sure is how it looks. So that's why we need to see what the offer is from government first, consider the different grant options available to us, and then bring it back and say, right, here's the ins and outs and the pros and cons of each of those, so that we can decide together which one we go for, and that would tell us a bit more about the tenure of housing. If there was no grant programme, which I can't imagine that would happen, but if on the outside chance there wasn't, we would definitely be regrouping again and deciding what to do going forward, because there is a lot of grant built into the business plan, because it is expected.
Yeah. Are we talking to government?
Yes. Yes. In two ways, actually. We're talking to government, so we're talking to Homes England, we're talking to government about grant programmes, and we're also talking to government in the world of the best value review, to give them comfort. So they saw this report when it was published, we sent it to them, we've got any questions, we've got a briefing with them coming up. So yes, from all angles, I think we're trying to cover it, and we're very much trying to say to government, come and work with us. You want housing, we want housing. There's a way of taking this forward together. So we'll see how it pans out, but that is the intention.
And the other matter, I think he raised it, but it was to do with the school. We've set a target of 2027, I think, which is pretty ambitious. Right. The explanation going forward ourselves with the school was explained last week at the briefing, great detail. Is that still realistic, or is there likely to be a hold up in that, especially if cabinet would decide not to go forward with the individual that's developer that's applied and been accepted?
I think there's two parts to that question, Chair. If Cabinet don't proceed with the contract for the lower acre, the school opening date automatically gets deferred, because the school opens based on the rate at which housing from the site is delivered. The first phase of housing doesn't trigger the school, the second phase does. But if the first phase is deferred because of not proceeding the Cabinet this week, I think it's 2 and 2 quite obviously means 4, and we're not going to be delivering housing at the rate of our current trajectory. So the school entity then would automatically fall under, you know, scrutiny and, you know, re-evaluation at that point. Parking that to 1 minute and assuming that we are there or thereabouts with the rate of housing supply that we anticipate, the risk of the school not opening in September 27, again, it kind of splits into two. The risk of the permanent building not being there in September 27, I think is significant, and we shouldn't shy away from that. But as was the case at Borley Green, for those that are familiar with that site, the new school at Borley opened without its building on site. It opened in a classroom at Wilden School. So there's 3 or 4 options which allow the new school to launch on the date where the new school is required without its permanent buildings on One Horton Heath. And if we get to a point where the programme risk materialises and the new facility in September 27 is looking doubtful, we need to explore those options with the incoming school sponsor and Hampshire County Council.
And finally, the report covers section, I think it's paragraph 93, which refers to lessons learned, phase 1. I think that is a really important matter, and I think that before the second phase is undertaken, we will have to see that in some sort of report. So it comes to us as lessons learned and what we're doing about it and how we're going to ensure that we move forward without making those same mistakes again, or do it in a different way because that didn't quite work, or it doesn't have to be a mistake, it's just the way of working that didn't quite happen for us. I think it's really important that we discuss that and have a chance to see that. So I will be recommending that. Because just to say that, oh, there'll be a lessons learned process actually isn't enough. You need to have some sort of meat on that bone. Say, yes, people are going to see it, they're going to consider it, and members will see it, consider it as well. So I think that's really important. Question we have, there's no further comments or questions. Okay. I have got some thoughts on how we see this as Audit and Resources Committee. And I know James wants to come in before we finish, but just firstly, we do have verbal reports regularly now on Northern Egypt, but we really do need to ensure, and we'll put it in the recommendation, that verbal reports at every meeting and written reports at least quarterly. Or major milestones, or if there's something that comes up that's like a grant that comes straight to us, and not held back to try and resolve it before it comes to us. The report on lessons learned, phase 1, that needs to be highlighted and come to us as well. Regular updates on the status of the school provision, because I see that as something that could slip, and it will be something that we need to keep tabs on, as will Cabinet. And Cabinet also needs to do what they can to, if they go forward with the scheme, to talk with government and be aware that as we are at the moment, we don't know what the government's thoughts are on grants, and we need to ensure that Cabinet will be aware of that when they make the decision. Because again, that could be expensive and costly.
Yep. Just to say, Will's just reminded me, the announcement on affordable housing is supposed to be coming tomorrow. So that might help with Cabinet decision, just a bit more information, but when we've got the information, we'll share it. Whether we'll have had time to absorb it and work through the implications, unlikely, but we'll see how we go. It depends what they say. It might be really simple.
And I did have a sort of a header which I'd misfound actually. I thought that If Cabinet is minded to approve, A&R would want to have regular reports on management of the project, and ensure resources meet requirements for meeting the targets and management of the project stay watertight. Because I think we need to stay on it, and that needs to be, although we're getting those reports, I think it needs to be emphasised that we would expect that to that report.
Could I just make one comment? For my sins, I sit on the North Whiteley Forum, which is the city council, and they come up with regular reports, presentations, links to aerial drone shots, so that every member of that committee is aware of what's going on, how the progress is going, something like that. I think is what we're looking for here, so we all know that progress is going the way that we expect. But it is very useful. I think every member there does appreciate that. It's an update, and then the pictorial.
So we're doing the quarterly updates. I think we might have done 2 now. Someone's going to correct me, that's not right, but I think it might be 2. So we're doing the quarterly written updates, and embedded in there are the links to all the drone footage, which I know Will's team are working on to make them easy to watch, and with a little bit of verbal overlay as well as just wanting samples and something on them, have a little bit more information so that when we watch those you'll be able to see it all come to life. So hopefully, but like I always say, when you read them, tell me what more you needed to say and what areas you want us to focus on. And one area will definitely be, if the contract is awarded, absolutely one of the things you'll be looking at regularly is performance against that contract and how we're getting on with it.
So, are members happy with that approach? Is there anything else you want to add that we want to send to Cabinet? On that.
I think it's key that we work through the social and affordable housing, because there's a very wide gamut what is affordable or not affordable housing, not affordable at all. That has commercial impact, so it's a balancing act. What we provide is not people who provide. Our own grant, and so we need to discuss that in some detail.
Okay, so I think that's our presentation.
Yes.
Yeah. So what we've got, so if Cabinet are minded to approve, we would want to ensure that regular reports come on the management of the project going forward. Verbal updates at every meeting, written reports of each quarter, or on any milestones or major changes or interruptions. A report on lessons learned between the 2 phases. Regular updates on the status of the schools provision and where we are with that. New government views, and make them aware that as we stand tonight, new government views on grants, future of grants, it's uncertain, so therefore we have to consider that and the implications of that, and we'll put back. But when they make their decision, they need to be aware of that, so we bring that to their attention. And it said about
The social and affordable housing, so that probably separate works. And there's another one which Councillor Tidridge picked up, which was about adding something before it gets to Cabinet. So I'll try and do something in the morning, looking at risk of the planning impacts.
Okay, that's right from the beginning.
Yeah, and an additional briefing on school. But that's not necessarily a recommendation, that's just for me to take away and sort of.
So can I overset? Councillor Bourne, second, Councillor Park on the table. Against abstentions. Thank you. That's very good. Thank you. Item. Oh, beg your pardon.
That's fine, Chair. Thank you. I've been collecting a few notes as we've gone along, and just thought I'd throw them in. And I wanted to do it after you resolved your recommendations, actually, because it's right for the team to debate the issues with you. First of all, just say it's been a pleasure to listen to the debate, and really good to see the committee getting stuck into the detail. So thank you for that. Connected to that, very pleased to hear from Councillor Tidridge that the quality of the reports is improving. We are trying, we are genuinely putting a lot of effort into it. If there's more we can do, let us know. But that's good to hear, and I think I will, if you don't mind, report that to some of our minders in central government that councillors are appreciative of the transparency of the reports. The one point I wanted to make on organisational capacity, which has been mentioned by a number of councillors as a risk, and it clearly is, just to say putting the budget in to cover the number of housing managers or whatever you need isn't enough. We're also dependent on the labour market. We have a budget for property professionals, we have a budget for environmental health officers, we still can't fill the posts. So that's just a risk to bear in mind as you go through assessing our proposals. And the final thing to say is just pick up on Cllr Tennent. We do understand that as we go through this process, the decisions get more and more real, and there's a kind of greater weight on each one as we get closer and closer. The rubber hits the road, as it were. Again, whatever we can do to support you with additional information and briefings, let us know. Of course, there comes a point where we've told you everything we can tell you, and it's for community leaders, it's up to yourselves to take these significant decisions. But it's been a really good debate.
Thank you, James. Just before we move on to item 6, I just wanted to mention that how helpful it is that we've got a glossary of terms. It was raised by a number of councillors that it would be helpful to have a glossary, and I think it's something that helps us read the report. It also helps the members of the public as well. So I think that is a good way forward, and we should ask for it on every report. Absolutely, it should be standard. We should have to ask for it. So yeah, I think it helps us to read through it. It's a good addition. I think it's the first time we've had it, so I thought I'd just mention it. Okay, item 6 is exempt business to consider passing a resolution under section 100A (4) of the Local Government Act 1972 in respect of the following item. Computer went off. In respect to the following item of business on the grounds that it is likely to involve disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act. Schedule 12A categories have been amended and are now subject to the public interest test. In accordance with the Freedom of Information Act 2000, this came into effect on the 1st of March 2006. It is considered that the following item is exempt from the disclosure and that the public interest is not disclosing the information outweigh the public interest in disclosing it. Can I have a proposal second? Proposed Councillor Bourne, secondly Councillor Park, in favour. Thank you. Any against? And any abstentions? Did not stand a word. We can read that out. Yeah, I'm sorry about that, but yes, we have to read it out. Right. So we just yes. Okay, so